Greetings, Your Majesty. I'm a dyed-to-the-wool monarchist, as was my father, and my father before him. We've held your mother's commission and your grandfather's commission in military service, and we listened patiently to your support for Islam through Ramadan. But I remind you, you are head of the Church of England, and that is a very critical role for you, which you don't seem to understand, and I'm not sure whether you're fully mentally well or not. If you're not, I wish you well. But it seems to me you have no real deep Christian faith, and neither does your son. Presumably you had a hand of bringing him up. This is a very important constitutional role as a Christian. And it now seems you're not going to give an Easter message, which I think confirms what many of your subjects have believed for some time, that you have somehow embraced the Islam faith. And that's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. I'm a libertarian. You must embrace whatever faith you think appropriate, but not as king. Not as king. You must abdicate, and I would suggest similarly that your son must not take the throne, because it seems to me you do not understand what your role seriously is. You're one of the richest men in the world, and you have a reputation, I could possibly comment on it, of being one of the meanest. What I'm suggesting to you is that you abdicate and get gone. Get thee gone. You are of no use to this country whatsoever. You have failed in every conceivable way in your relatively short period of time on the throne. In the name of God, go!
So that just happened. No soft landing, no polite disagreement, no let me phrase this carefully. Just a straight line jump from greetings, Your Majesty, to in the name of God, go. And honestly, that energy didn't come out of nowhere. Because what you just watched wasn't some random critic having a moment. That was a loyalist, the kind of person who has spent a lifetime believing in the monarchy, defending it, respecting it, and then finally hitting a point where even they couldn't pretend anymore. And that right there, that's the part people should be paying attention to. Because when outsiders criticize the monarchy, it gets brushed off. It's noise, it's agenda, it's bias. But when someone from inside the belief system steps up and says, this isn't working, that's not noise, that's a crack. Let's start where he started. He made it very clear this isn't new for him. This isn't a phase. This isn't someone jumping on a trend. This is generational loyalty, the kind that gets passed down like a family heirloom. My father believed, his father believed, and I believed too. And that's exactly why this hits harder. Because this isn't rebellion. This is disappointment. This is what it looks like when someone who has defended an institution for years suddenly realizes that what they believed in doesn't match what they're seeing anymore. And here's the uncomfortable truth for the monarchy. Disappointment from your own supporters is far more dangerous than criticism from your opponents. Critics already don't believe in you. Supporters, they're the ones holding the whole thing up. Let's take a second and remove the fantasy layer, because the monarchy survives on presentation, ceremony, titles, tradition, the whole carefully curated image that says this is bigger than ordinary life. But moments like this, they rip that illusion apart. Because suddenly it's not about some untouchable institution. It's about King Charles III as a person being questioned, a person being criticized, a person being told very directly, you're not doing this well. And that's the thing no one wants to say out loud. Once you strip away the symbolism, the monarchy isn't some magical, flawless system. It's people in positions of extreme privilege trying to meet expectations that were designed centuries ago. And surprise, that doesn't always go smoothly. Now let's get into the part that really exposed the mindset behind all of this. The religion argument. This man wasn't just talking about leadership. He was talking about identity, about what the monarch is supposed to represent. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because what he's really saying is, you don't match the version of this role that I believe in. Not you're doing something illegal, not you've broken a rule, but you're not fitting the image I expect. And that right there shows the problem. Because the monarchy sells itself as modern when it needs to, but the expectations placed on it are still deeply rooted in the past. So you end up with this contradiction. People want a monarch who is relatable, forward-thinking, globally aware, but also locked into a very specific identity that never changes, never evolves, and never steps outside tradition. That's not leadership. That's performance. Now let's address the moment everyone is focusing on, the line about mental well-being. Here's the reality. That wasn't strategy. That wasn't calculated. That was frustration reaching its peak. And honestly, you can hear it. This is what happens when someone feels like they've been watching something decline or drift for a long time and no one is acknowledging it. The filter disappears, the language gets sharper, the emotion takes over. Is it polished? No. Is it comfortable? Definitely not. But it's real. And underneath the wording, what you're actually hearing is doubt. Doubt about leadership, doubt about direction, doubt about whether the person at the center truly understands the weight of the role they're holding. And that kind of doubt doesn't just appear randomly, it builds. Now here's where the whole thing really starts to fall apart. You can believe whatever you want, but not as king. That line right there, that's the monarchy in a nutshell. Freedom with conditions. Identity with restrictions. Individuality, but only within a very tight, very controlled box. And people are starting to notice how unrealistic that is. Because you can't have it both ways forever. You can't expect someone to be human, but also function like a perfectly preserved artifact from another era. At some point, something gives. And what we're seeing now is that pressure starting to show. And just when you think it's contained to the present, he pulls the future into it. Prince William doesn't escape. He basically says, not only is this not working now, I don't trust what's coming next either. That's huge, because that's not just criticism. That's loss of confidence in the entire direction of the institution. It's one thing to question a leader. It's another to question the pipeline. And when people start doing that, that's when the foundation starts to look shaky. Then we get to the part that really lands. You are of no use to this country whatsoever. That's not softened. That's not diplomatic. That's not carefully worded. That's a final verdict. And again, it's not coming from someone who rejects the monarchy entirely. It's coming from someone who expected more from it. And that's the difference. This isn't about tearing something down for the sake of it. This is about someone looking at what's being delivered and deciding it doesn't justify the existence of the system anymore. Now, here's where everything connects, because moments like this don't just stay in isolation. They explain things. They give context. They make other decisions start to make a lot more sense. Take Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. People love to act like their exit came out of nowhere, like it was sudden, dramatic, unnecessary. But look at what we're watching right now. Look at the expectations. Look at the rigidity. Look at how quickly people turn when the image isn't perfectly maintained. Now imagine living inside that. Every day, every move scrutinized, every decision filtered through tradition, expectation, and public judgment. At some point, it stops being about duty. It becomes about survival. And whether people want to admit it or not, moments like this make it a lot easier to understand why stepping away wasn't just an option. It was inevitable. And here's the bigger picture. The monarchy has always relied on this idea that it's stable, untouchable, above the chaos. But what happens when the chaos starts coming from within? What happens when the people who are supposed to defend it start questioning it instead? That illusion starts to crack. And once people see those cracks, they can't unsee them. And here's the part that people keep dancing around. This isn't just about one speech, one man, or one moment of frustration. This is about a system that demands perfection while quietly running on pressure, silence, and expectation. What you're seeing here is someone who finally said the quiet part out loud. Not polished, not media trained, not softened for public comfort, just said it. And that's exactly what makes it powerful. Because for years, the monarchy has relied on this unspoken agreement. You respect it, you don't question it too loudly, and in return, it maintains this image of stability and importance. But what happens when people stop playing along with that script? What happens when someone decides the image doesn't match the reality anymore? You get moments like this. And now think about this from another angle. Imagine being inside that system, not just observing it, but living it, navigating the expectations, the restrictions, the constant need to perform a role that was written long before you were even born. That's the part people overlook when it comes to Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. They didn't just see the cracks, they lived in them. They experienced firsthand what it means to exist in a structure where image often matters more than individuality, where stepping slightly out of line can trigger backlash that feels completely disproportionate. So when people act confused about why they chose to step back, moments like this quietly answer that question. Because this pressure, this rigidity, this expectation that everything must fit a very specific mold, it doesn't just affect people watching from the outside, it defines the experience on the inside. And not everyone is willing to stay in a system that doesn't allow them to fully exist as themselves. So one person stands there demanding change, another chose to walk away entirely. Different reactions, same underlying problem. And the more these moments keep happening, the clearer that problem becomes. So no, what we just watched wasn't just a rant. It was a signal, a loud, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore signal that something isn't lining up the way it used to. Because when loyalty turns into public frustration, that's not random. That's a shift. And the more moments like this keep happening, the harder it becomes to pretend everything is fine. The monarchy can keep the ceremony, it can keep the titles, it can keep the image. But if the belief underneath it starts fading, none of that is going to hold it up forever. And right now, that belief is looking a little shaky. And maybe the most uncomfortable part of all this is how normal it's starting to feel to hear this kind of frustration out loud. Not from fringe critics, not from predictable commentators, but from people who once stood firmly inside the belief system. That shift alone tells you something is changing underneath the surface. It doesn't happen loudly at first. It starts like this: small moments, sharp words, unexpected honesty slipping through where rehearsed respect used to be. Because institutions like this don't usually fall apart in one dramatic instant, they erode in perception first. One conversation at a time, one speech at a time, one person at a time, quietly admitting, this doesn't feel like what it used to be. And once that feeling spreads, even if it's subtle, it changes the entire atmosphere around it. The image stays polished on the outside, but the confidence underneath it starts to shift. And that's why moments like this linger, not because of the drama itself, but because of what they reveal about where things are heading. Whether people support the monarchy or question it entirely, what's becoming harder to ignore is that the conversation around it is no longer stable or one-directional. It's fractured, it's emotional, and it's increasingly coming from unexpected places. And once that many voices start sounding uncertain in different ways, it stops being just commentary and starts becoming a pattern. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and take care.